Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. Harvard President Claudine Gay resigning from her post, but will she be leaving the university? And what does the lawmaker who sparked the controversy by questioning Gay at the congressional hearing have to say?
Cash, gold bars, and a luxury car. Senator Bob Menendez is facing new accusations of corruption and bribery. More on a superseding indictment involving Qatar.
And international pressure is piling up for Israel, which will now find itself in international court to defend itself against claims of genocide. Jason Perry has the latest on the war.
A D.C. judge dismisses part of a lawsuit against former President Trump related to the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. But other accusations in the case will continue, and Trump doubles down on his claim of presidential immunity by appealing Maine's ruling to take him off the ballot.
House Speaker Mike Johnson is leading a delegation to Eagle Pass, Texas, in light of a record number of illegal border crossings. We speak to an expert for the details of what's to come.
What's in store for the real estate market in 2024? A seasoned realtor gives you some tips on selling, refinancing, and buying this year, with one trick making you 75 grand richer.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning and welcome. Today is Wednesday, January 3rd.
Yeah, and Evelyn Gay lasted just over 6 months.
Yeah, and that makes us the shortest tenure of any Harvard president to date.
That's right, and this in part suggests that America will not tolerate what is seen as a weak response to anti-Semitism, among other things, and this is our lead story today.
Right, so the embattled Harvard president Claudine Gay, we're talking about, announced yesterday she's stepping down.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on her resignation just 6 months into her tenure.
The move comes after a tumultuous month following Gay's testimony to Congress about campus anti-Semitism.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
Gay soon came under pressure to resign from Harvard's Jewish community and others. The university was also hit financially, as some wealthy donors suspended or withdrew funding. Harvard alum and billionaire investor Bill Ackman wrote on X that he was personally aware of more than $1 billion of terminated donations from a small group of Harvard's most generous Jewish and non-Jewish alumni. More than 70 lawmakers signed a letter demanding that Harvard remove Gay. The letter also called for the firing of the University of Pennsylvania's Liz McGill and MIT's President Sally Kornbluth, both who testified at the same congressional hearing and also declined to give a definitive yes or no answer to whether calling for the genocide of Jews would violate their school's codes of conduct regarding bullying and harassment. UPenn President Liz McGill resigned days after the hearing. Following Gay's resignation, Representative Elise Stefanik wrote on X, 2 down. Last month, Harvard's Alumni Association Executive Committee said it unanimously and unequivocally supported the president. But on another front, a House committee widened its probe into anti-Semitism at Harvard to include an investigation into plagiarism in Gay's academic writing. Gay faced widespread criticism after the plagiarism accusations emerged, including multiple instances of missing quotation marks and citations. Jacob Miller, Harvard student and Hillel president, said Gay stepping down is just the first step.
For me, the most important issue has been the anti-Semitism we've been seeing on a nearly daily basis across the school.
In her resignation letter, Gay said, quote, "It has been distressing to have doubt cast on my commitments to confronting hate and to upholding scholarly rigor, and frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racial animus." Harvard Corporation defended Gay and said they accepted her resignation with sorrow. The corporation, which is the university's governing body, said she showed remarkable resilience in the face of deeply personal and sustained attacks. Although Gay has stepped down as president, she will remain at Harvard, returning to a position on the school's faculty. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And for an in-depth discussion on Claudine Gay's resignation, we hear from William Jacobson, a Cornell law professor and the founder of equalprotect.org. Bill, thanks for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So we got a lot to unpack here. We have plagiarism allegations against Gay, and also after national backlash, that's when she distanced herself from that group, saying that it was all Israel's fault, the violence, and condemned Hamas. And then it was heated testimony that caused her to apologize for her remarks on combating anti-Semitism. Was all that too little, too late, and that's why she resigned?
Well, I think it was all of that, but it was also the plagiarism accusations, which were very substantial despite what Harvard says. They were not trivial. And when you have the head of an academic organization, probably the most prestigious in the world, who has credibility problems for her own academics, I think that's a problem. So I think it was a combination. I don't think if it was just the anti-Semitism issue, that she would be gone. I think it was a combination of both.
That is really interesting you point that out. So what does Harvard have to do now to rebuild its public image?
Well, it's very difficult because she was not the problem. She was a symptom of a deeper problem at Harvard and many other elite schools, particularly in the Ivy League, which is that they have embraced a racialization of education under the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it is poisonous throughout the system. It takes away from merit. It takes away from advancement of all people equally without regard to race. And she was a big advocate of that. She was the DEI president. And that is the deeper problem that I don't think Harvard or any of the other schools are ready yet to confront.
Can you explain the selection process for a school's president and how it led to a situation like this?
Well, it's really baffling how she became the president of Harvard University. She was not an esteemed scholar. She was not a notable person. Nobody really outside maybe of their little circle had ever heard of her. So it's really baffling. And I think that lended itself to, issues with regard to her credibility. When her scholarship, her paltry scholarship, was called into question, the question became, why was she picked? And Harvard's never given an answer for that. But it wasn't based on her prior performance or her reputation or, her standing in the academic community. And that's the problem. They selected her for other reasons, and hopefully they will select the next person based on their merit and their credibility and their reputation in the community and not other factors.
Right, and Gay said that she was the victim of a racist attack surrounding her resignation here. In your view, does that have anything to do with it?
I don't think so. I mean, the internet's a nasty place. We all know that. And I have no doubt that foul and offensive things were probably sent her way, as they are to many people who are public figures, in this day and age of the internet. But that's not why she had to resign. She had to resign because of her poor job performance and her inability to communicate, and the fact that she'd become a punchline, a laughing stock. There were all sorts of memes floating around about her plagiarism. So she had lost her credibility, much like Liz McGill at University of Pennsylvania, although not accused of plagiarism, lost her credibility. So you have two presidents, one white, one black, who were both pressured out of office. I don't see how you can claim that Claudine Gay was pressured out of office because of her race.
Was the questioning by Representative Elise Stefanik effective in holding accountable the heads of universities who had a questionable response after the October 7th terrorist attacks?
Well, I think it was really incredible start. It really put a big spotlight on what's happening on campuses. It can't be the end of the accountability, but it was the beginning. And I think Elise Stefanik and other members of that committee deserve a lot of praise for putting a spotlight on an issue that those of us on campuses know exists, but really hasn't been covered by the media and the general public doesn't know, but they do now. So it was a great first step.
And just in a few seconds here, Bill, do you think that Sally Kornbluth, the president of MIT, is now really questioning what she should do at this stage?
It doesn't look that way. She immediately got full backing of the board at MIT. She has been out of sight, out of mind for the most part. Whether she will come back into sight and mind, I don't know. But whoever gave her advice to just disappear, essentially, from the public airwaves and to disappear from public view probably gave her very good advice. So I don't know what's going to happen with her, but she certainly didn't make the sort of mistakes that the presidents of UPenn and Harvard made.
Law professor at Cornell, William Jacobson, thank you so much for your time on this.
Thank you.
A new indictment against Senator Bob Menendez accuses him of accepting gifts from Qatar as part of a years-long corruption scheme.
The superseding indictment released yesterday claims the New Jersey Democrat used influence to help secure an investment for a co-conspirator from a fund tied to Qatar's government.
Prosecutors allege he exchanged favors for money, gold, and race car tickets, among other things. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the new accusations.
Federal prosecutors allege in Tuesday's superseding indictment that Menendez's bribery and extortion scheme ran into 2023, a year longer than they initially believed. The indictment accuses Menendez of a years-long corruption scheme, adding Qatar to a list beside Egypt as foreign countries he allegedly helped while in office. Prosecutors claim Menendez accepted payments from a co-conspirator, New Jersey real estate developer Fred Davies, to help obtain millions of dollars from an investment fund tied to Qatar. The rewritten indictment alleges the senator introduced a member of the Qatari royal family and a member of the fund to Davies. Prosecutors say Menendez did not note gifts from Qatar and Davies on his financial disclosure forms, including a gold bar and tickets to the Formula One Grand Prix. Davies is one of 3 businessmen charged, along with the senator and his wife. All of them have pleaded not guilty. In addition to bribery charges, Menendez is accused of acting as a foreign agent for the government of Egypt. That's for allegedly helping the country to benefit another co-defendant's export business. Menendez's attorney stated Tuesday that the government doesn't have the proof to back up any of the accusations, calling them baseless, bizarre, and based on routine lawful contacts between constituents or foreign officials. Menendez was chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, but gave the position up after being arrested last year. He has resisted calls to step down from the Senate. GOP presidential candidate Chris Christie says he's disappointed with Democrats for not taking solid action.
At least the Republicans removed George Santos. Where are the Democrats in the United States Senate with removing this guy? This is now a second superseding indictment, so it's a third set of charges.
Christie says it's too big a risk, given Menendez's position of leadership and access to U.S. intelligence.
I don't understand how Chuck Schumer can't go to Mitch McConnell right now and say, look, we need to have a vote to kick him out.
Menendez is facing charges of conspiring to commit bribery, honest services fraud, extortion, and acting as a foreign agent. His trial is set for May 6th. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Stay with us. A federal judge dismisses part of a lawsuit against former President Trump related to the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. But other accusations in the case will continue, and Trump doubles down on his claim of presidential immunity by appealing Maine's ruling to take him off the ballot.
A Pennsylvania lawsuit citing the 14th Amendment aims to keep Pennsylvania Congressman Scott Perry off the primary ballot there. We have more on what the suit's alleging.
Former President Trump is racking up endorsements in both the House and the Senate. Meanwhile, his Republican challengers are struggling to gain traction in the presidential race. Arlene Richards has the latest for us in just a moment.
Good to have you back. Former President Trump is now mounting a formal challenge against the Maine ruling that seeks to ban him from the state's ballot, with a likely appeal in Colorado on the horizon.
That's as he again doubles down on his presidential immunity claim in the 2020 election case. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao reports.
Former President Trump's team has just filed an appeal to the Maine decision by its Secretary of State to keep him off the primary ballot in that state, and that appeal is going to the state's Superior Court. Meanwhile, we're also waiting for Trump to file another appeal to the Colorado Supreme Court ruling that would also keep him off the ballot, and that appeal is expected to go to the U.S. Supreme Court here in D.C. And while we await that appeal to come, let's not forget that both rulings, both in Maine and in Colorado, actually actually remain on hold until the appeals end, meaning that former President Trump does remain on the ballots in both states as of now. And here's Colorado's Democratic Secretary of State explaining that.
We hear it's being reported that Donald Trump is going to file his appeal, and until the Supreme Court refuses to review the case or take some type of action, he is back on the ballot in the state of Colorado.
And as Trump's legal calendar unfolds in the coming days and weeks, we're going to soon get a sense of how much his legal battles are impacting voters' choice when the Iowa caucus comes in less than 2 weeks. And meanwhile, in the 2020 election case and the federal case here, Trump today doubling down on the claim that he's immune from prosecution because he was the president when January 6 happened. On Truth Social, he shared what he called a fully verified report on alleged election fraud in the 2020 election, adding that it proves that he's entitled to total immunity because he was taking care of the country and guarding it from rigged elections. Special counsel Jack Smith, however, is urging the appeals court here in D.C. to reject Trump's claim, saying that it's a threat to democracy and the constitutional foundation of this country. And oral arguments in this case are scheduled for next Tuesday, January 9th, and no matter how the appeals court here rules, we do expect the question of Trump's presidential immunity to be presented to the U.S. Supreme Court sooner or later. Back to you.
A federal judge has dismissed part of a lawsuit against former President Trump and 2 J6 defendants. It's related to the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick.
Sicknick had 2 strokes and died a day after the Capitol was breached. Sicknick's ex-girlfriend Sandra Garza brought the lawsuit against Trump.
The judge in the case found Garza lacked statutory standing to bring a wrongful death claim because she was not his spouse or domestic partner under D.C. law. 3 of the 5 civil counts were dismissed. Garza can now proceed with a claim against Trump under D.C.'s Survival Act. It allows a representative of Sicknick's estate to take legal action on his behalf after his death. Another part of the lawsuit that's allowed to continue is an accusation that Trump and the 2 defendants engaged in a conspiracy to violate civil rights. The judge noted that the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals has already ruled that Trump doesn't have presidential immunity from J6 lawsuits. More accusations of insurrection. A lawsuit filed yesterday aims to keep a Pennsylvania congressman off the state's primary ballot over the Constitution's vague insurrection clause. The suit aims to bar Representative Scott Perry from the 2024 ballot. It cites Perry's role in trying to use the Department of Justice to stall certification of the 2020 presidential election. Perry's lawyer said the lawsuit was filed by a partisan activist with no regard or understanding of how democracy works. He said he's confident the Supreme Court will put an end to the question. Perry is expected to run for a 7th term, although candidates cannot file paperwork yet to qualify for Pennsylvania's primary ballot. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise says America needs a strong leader. That's one reason he says he's endorsing former President Trump. This comes as Trump is winning over a growing number of Senate Republicans. Meanwhile, the presidential challengers are struggling to catch up to Trump's overwhelming lead. NTD's Arlene Richards brings us the highlights.
House Majority Leader Steve Scalise formally endorses Donald Trump for president Tuesday. Scalise is the latest top Republican elected official to support the former president. In a social media post, he said, "I look forward to working with President Trump and a Republican House and Senate to fight for those families who are struggling under the weight of Biden's failed policies." He told Fox News American workers and families are thriving during the Trump administration, and that President Biden has driven our country into chaos with skyrocketing costs, and hardworking taxpayers are the ones paying the price. Scalise's announcement comes less than 2 weeks before the Iowa caucuses kick off the voting process. With Scalise's endorsement, Trump has racked up support from 3 of the 4 House GOP leaders. Speaker Mike Johnson and House Republican Conference Chairwoman Elise Stefanik endorsed Trump earlier in the primary season. The former president's even making headway with Senate Republicans. He snagged 5 Senate endorsements in December alone, including freshman Senator Katie Britt and Missouri Republican Josh Hawley. With these recent endorsements, Trump has scored 18 senators and more than 90 House members. The recent endorsements come as Republican candidates struggle to catch up to Trump's significant lead nationally and in Iowa. Do they have any new strategies? Former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley is still focused on New Hampshire, but she'll have to get past some criticism over her failure to mention slavery when answering a question about the Civil War. In addition, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie refuses to bow out of the race. He's making a stand in New Hampshire that complicates Haley's momentum there. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is throwing all of his efforts into the Iowa caucuses. With the polls showing Haley holding a strong second in New Hampshire, DeSantis is determined to show he is the clear second-place candidate in Iowa. But even with the governor's appeals to evangelicals, Trump has a strong foothold in the faith communities, and he remains the clear frontrunner in the state of Iowa. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The last GOP debate before the Iowa caucuses will only include two candidates, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. That's according to CNN, which will host the January 10th debate.
Haley, DeSantis, and former President Trump have successfully qualified, but instead Trump will hold a Fox News town hall meeting in Iowa at the same time, according to Fox.
Entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie failed to meet CNN's debate qualifications. In a post on X, Ramaswamy predicted that the DeSantis-Haley debate would be the most boring in modern history and said he would participate in a podcast hosted by journalist Tim Pool instead.
Nikki Haley criticized Trump for failing to participate in another debate. She said it's time for Trump to show up with only 3 candidates qualifying.
CBS reports that the RNC won't be involved in the January 10th debate or any debates afterwards, saying it's up to the candidates if they wish to participate. The debate is scheduled for January 10th at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa.
Just ahead, asleep at the wheel, House Speaker Mike Johnson has some harsh words for the Biden administration. He's taking 60 lawmakers down with him to Texas today. Find out more about the trip coming up.
Good to have you back. As the illegal immigration crisis continues unabated, House Speaker Mike Johnson is heading to Eagle Pass, Texas today to visit the border.
Johnson will be accompanied by 60 other Republican lawmakers.
They will meet with state and local officials to discuss their experience on the ground and what they see as failures of the Biden administration to enforce border policy.
Speaker Johnson says America is experiencing the worst border crisis in the nation's history and stated it's impacting every community in the country. He's accusing President Biden and Senate Democrats of being asleep at the wheel.
Johnson says House Republicans are demanding immediate solutions to the problems. Fox News reported that over 300,000 people attempted to cross the southern border in December alone.
The House Speaker will hold a news conference on border security at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
So joining me now for more is Simon Hankinson. He is a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation's Border Security and Immigration Center and a former diplomat. Good morning. It's really good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us. First, I want to ask you about what do you think is Speaker Johnson's goal? What does he hope will come out of this visit?
Well, first, I hope that he wants to see with his own eyes and to have 60 Republicans see with their own eyes the actual disaster that's taking place on our border. I've been to Eagle Pass. I've been to the border 3 times in the last year and a half. President Biden has been 1 time in the entire time that he's been an elected official, over 50 years. And until you see it for yourself, you see the number of people coming over every single day, over 10,000 many days. And we're talking about several thousand just in this Eagle Pass area alone. And you see that they're coming from all over the world and that they're being processed in essentially with no information about who they are, what their past is, and no right to come into the United States on the premise that they're all coming in as asylum.
Right. I wonder, what do you think, though, should the focus be during this visit to actually move things forward towards a solution?
Well, there can't be any solution that doesn't involve reforming the parole and asylum magnets that are sucking people towards the border. Those are the primary draw that bring people to the southern border. And all the Biden administration has asked for is more money so that they can process people at places like this Firefly tent city, where you can see on Twitter and Fox News and other places videos of thousands of people coming in every day. So it has to be a solution that involves fundamental reform and control of the borders so that this doesn't go on indefinitely.
Right. At this point, it really seems like, because Democrats that are frustrated with it, this also, sanctuary cities pleading for help, they just don't seem to agree with the Republicans' demand. So where do you see common ground on this issue?
I don't see a lot of common ground. This is one of those times where it's going to have to be a hard bargain. We've seen this before over various issues in U.S. history where you have two completely opposing viewpoints. One time we had a civil war over it, but most of the time we're able to figure out some kind of solution. What Republicans want is they want actual border security and control over our immigration system, as opposed to the open borders that we have now. And so far, Democrats are kind of split between the people in the cities that are seeing the physical results of these idiotic policies and the people in Washington who are completely oblivious to it. And you notice there's not many Democrats in that group going down to the Eagle Pass today.
Yeah, I am. And it does make me curious, though, with election around the corner, from an election standpoint, how much of an interest there actually is to speed things up. Because right now it seems like the blame, mostly from the Republican side, is on the White House. What do you think about it?
Well, I think there's some blame to go around. Obviously, we haven't had a comprehensive reform package in 40 years because it's really hard to organize. But I do put the majority of the blame on the White House. This is a deliberate series of policies by the Biden administration to de-emphasize enforcement in the interior, to basically allow almost everybody to cross the border and then release probably half or more of them into the interior indefinitely, because the immigration court system is so blocked up. So, the White House is going to have to make some tough choices. Either they keep going with this far left open borders ideology and hope for the best, or they accept the fact that most Americans do support, at the very least, enforcement of our current laws.
Right, just quickly, one last question, because it seems like the timeline is getting longer with government funding deadlines also approaching. So what do you think? Is there something that can be done? What can be done to reach a deal on the border crisis more quickly and instead of dragging this out?
Well, honestly, I'm not sure quick is the answer here, because we're talking about reforms that are so fundamental that they have to be written extremely well and carefully. And trying to rush through bills in a hurry of thousands of pages that no one has had a time to read is sort of standard operating policy in Washington, and it's not going to be effective. So I'd rather it took longer, even if it involved, a shutdown, and we actually had something at the end of it that was going to do the job.
Right, and be more thorough. Thank you so much, Simon Hankinson. I really appreciate your time this morning.
My pleasure.
The Biden administration looking for options as surging numbers break records at the southern border.
Officials say increasing deportation flights for illegal immigrants to Venezuela is on the table, according to Fox News.
The administration reportedly sees such flights as a critical part of immigration strategy and an important deterrent. Officials praised Mexico for starting deportation flights of its own to Venezuela.
On Tuesday, officials announced that Mexico has implemented enhanced enforcement operations to ease congestion at the southern border. That will allow the reopening of ports of entry in Eagle Pass, Texas, Lupeville, Arizona, and other locations on Thursday, as reported by Fox News. And the Biden administration is asking the Supreme Court to allow the removal of razor wire set up along the border by the state of Texas. Texas installed the wire to stop the flow of illegal immigrants. An appeals court previously blocked the administration from taking action. The ruling by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals blocked the administration last month from damaging and interfering with the concert and wire in Eagle Pass. Its exception was made for medical emergencies. The Department of Justice says the razor wire endangers the lives of migrants. It further argued that it stops Border Patrol from effectively carrying out their duty. It's the latest action in an ongoing dispute over border security in the state initiated by Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Abbott posted on X that he would appeal the motion.
Coming up, the U.S. has reportedly reached an agreement with Qatar to continue operating its military base there. Stay tuned as we dig into the significance of the deal.
And international pressure is piling up on Israel, which will now find itself in international court to defend itself against claims of genocide. Jason Perry has the latest on the war.
Major elections happening around the world in 2024, including places like Taiwan and India. We take a closer look at what's happening this year around the world. Good morning and good to have you back. The U.S. has reportedly reached an agreement with Qatar to continue operating its military base, the largest in the Middle East, for another 10 years.
Though it hasn't been announced publicly, 3 U.S. defense officials told CNN the U.S. signed a deal that will extend U.S. military presence in the region until 2034.
The air base located near Doha can house more than 10,000 troops.
The base has been a hub for U.S. Central Command's air operations in Afghanistan, Iran, and across the Middle East. Qatari and British air forces also operate out of the base.
Qatar has become a key mediator between the U.S. and its enemies in the region, including Iran and the Taliban. Its recent role in negotiating the release of captives from Venezuela and Gaza is seen by some analysts as an extension of this role.
Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin visited the base last month, where he thanked Qatar for their increased spending on the military installation.
This extension would come as the U.S. bolsters its presence in the region amid escalating threats from Iran-backed terror groups in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. And after continued warnings to Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon, it appears Israeli forces have just struck a Hamas terrorist near Lebanon's capital city.
And as international pressure piles up against Israel, Turkey has just detained over 30 people suspected of spying for Israel. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
Israeli forces continue to keep the pressure on Hamas terrorists in the Gaza Strip as Israel itself faces escalating pressure internationally. Recently, Israel has been stepping up its warnings to Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon about it continually shooting rockets into Israeli communities. Israel's defense minister said this about the situation on Tuesday.
We are constantly watching the arena and holding a finger on the trigger as far as what is happening in the northern arena.
And also on Tuesday, Israeli forces struck a suburb just south of Beirut, killing a Hamas leader near the capital of Lebanon, according to Lebanon state-run media. The United States had a $5 million reward for information leading to this senior Hamas official. The IDF did not confirm or deny the attack. And Israel is not only facing escalating tensions along its borders. Diplomatic relations have gotten more intense between Israel and NATO member Turkey. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has accused Israel of committing genocide in its war against Hamas terrorists, comparing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Hitler. Netanyahu said this in response. Erdogan, who commits genocide against the Kurds, who holds a world record for imprisoning journalists who oppose his rule, is the last person who can preach morality to us. Erdogan has previously hosted several Hamas officials. And on Tuesday, just a few days after Netanyahu's comments, Turkish authorities detained 33 people it suspected of spying for Israel. According to Turkish state-run media, the detainees were allegedly planning to harm foreign nationals in Turkey. Meanwhile, Israel is also facing international pressure from South Africa, which has also accused Israel of genocide in its war against Hamas terrorists. On Friday, South Africa filed charges against Israel at the International Court of Justice. Israel's government spokesperson responded to the charges on Tuesday.
The State of Israel will appear before the International Court of Justice at The Hague to dispel South Africa's absurd blood libel. How tragic that the rainbow nation that prides itself on fighting racism will be fighting pro bono for anti-Jewish racists.
According to the Hamas-run health ministry, approximately 22,000 people have died in the Gaza Strip since the war began, and the IDF says they've killed approximately 8,000 terrorists. Israel will defend its actions at The Hague on January 11th and 12th. That's according to a South African official's statement on X. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Shipping giant Maersk is extending a pause on operations in the Red Sea until further notice. Instead, they will send some vessels around the Cape of Good Hope in southern Africa. The decision comes after one of their container ships was attacked by 4 Houthi boats over the weekend. Other major shipping companies have also stopped using the route. The route accounts for 10 to 15% of the world's shipping trade. The longer shipping companies don't use the Red Sea route, the higher the risk it will impact global inflation.
Besides the U.S. general elections in November 2024, there are also other important races happening around the globe.
Here are some of the key elections in the world this year.
Starting off the year, on January 13th, Taiwan will hold its presidential election. Incumbent President Tsai Ing-wen is barred by term limits from seeking re-election. Her party's candidate for president, Lai Ching-te, is currently Tsai's vice president. He has pledged to continue bolstering Taiwan's defenses in the face of threats from communist China.
The whole world wants to know whether the people of Taiwan will continue to move forward on the path of democracy in this major election, or whether they will choose to rely on China, follow a pro-China path, and lock Taiwan into China again.
Polls show Lai as the frontrunner, ahead of candidates from opposition parties Kuomintang and the Taiwan People's Party. Next, from March 15th to 17th, Russia will hold its presidential election. President Vladimir Putin has been in power for 24 years, and on December 8th, he announced he will run for a 5th term. That would be another 6 years in office, till 2030. The last election in 2021 was dominated by widespread reports of fraud, with the vast majority of opposition figures either in jail or outside Russia. Putin is poised to win.
I want to emphasize again that any attempt to sow inter-ethnic and inter-religious discord, to split our society, is a betrayal, a crime against the whole of Russia. We will not allow anyone to divide Russia, which is the only one we have.
Putin's victory would guarantee the war in Ukraine will continue. The Kremlin has said the idea of peace talks on Ukraine's terms are unrealistic. For the first time, the election will take place over 3 days, and it will cover 4 regions of Ukraine recently annexed by Russia in the war. The world's most populous democracy, India, will hold general elections between April and May. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is seeking a 3rd term in office. That's another 5 years. Surveys show Modi widely popular after a decade in power. Under him, India played a bigger role in global diplomacy and embraced global climate goals.
Our target by 2030, emissions intensity has to be reduced by 45%. We have decided that we will increase the share of non-fossil fuels to 50%, and we will also keep moving towards the goal of 2070 and net zero.
Modi's ruling party scored major victories in provincial elections in December, giving him a boost ahead of the national election. But he still faces a challenge from a 28-party opposition alliance. Next summer, on June 2nd, Mexico will hold its presidential election. Incumbent President Andrés Manuel López Obrador is barred by term limits from running again. So Mexico will have a new president, and for the first time, it looks like it will be a woman. The president and his party are backing Claudia Sheinbaum. She's the former mayor of Mexico City. Polls show Sheinbaum having double the support of her opposition rival, Xochitl Gálvez. The Mexican president serves one 6-year term. Then, from June 6th to 9th, citizens in 27 EU member states will vote for members of the European Parliament. About 400 million eligible voters will choose their representatives. That's 720 seats in total. Members serve 5-year terms. No party has held a majority, so the parliament depends on parties forming coalitions. Currently, there is a major coalition between the People's Party and the Socialists. Right-leaning politicians scored recent victories in Italy and the Netherlands. It's worth seeing whether the trend will continue in the 2024 EU election. Finally, on November 5th, the U.S. will have its presidential election. Incumbent President Joe Biden, a Democrat, is running for a 2nd term. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump, a Republican, is also running for his 2nd term in office. The race is likely going to be a rematch between Biden and Trump, just like in 2020. The latest polls show Trump dominating the Republican primary.
Big things happening.
Yeah, well, with the ruling party having the advantage in Taiwan, it looks like there's some good news for Taiwan's autonomy.
Right. Beijing did say that William Lai-Ching-te was a separatist and a threat, which I guess could be a good reason why he's a front runner. But, you know, Ho from Kuomintang apparently is pretty China friendly. So with, you know, the growing threat, it seems like there's a bit on the line there.
Yeah, and there's going to have to be a lot of close eyes on this, especially in the event that there are more incursions and things like that, as Beijing gets chesty and tries to reunify Taiwan, even though the CCP has never actually owned that territory.
Exactly. So definitely something we will keep an eye on this year, of course. So we're heading to a quick break.
Yes, and the national debt is at an all-time record high of $34 trillion. Is this cause for concern? We hear both parties weighing in on the matter.
Mortgage rates could fall this year. Time to refinance. And are there ways to get a boost if you're buying a home? A veteran realtor gives us the scoop. Thanks for staying with us. U.S. national debt has hit a new record, more than $34 trillion.
It's due to many factors, including higher borrowing costs due to interest rates and lower tax receipts.
The actual impact of high debt is debatable. Some experts believe it's a threat to the country's fiscal health, while others believe it's okay so long as the economy remains strong. Either way, it's sure to become a political bone of contention.
President Biden blames GOP tax cuts on the deficit. Republicans say it's because he spent too much money. The benchmark also comes as federal spending laws are set to expire in the next few weeks. If Congress fails to pass extensions, the government could shut down.
And if you own a home and are looking to refinance or sell, or if you want to buy a home, listen up.
Yeah, I asked an over 25-year veteran realtor, Jennifer Hammond, who's an expert on the real estate market, what's happening now and what to expect this year. Take a look.
Yay! It's going to be an amazing year this year. It has so many wonderful things that are going to happen. Number one, I expect that interest rates, when I look at my crystal ball, I see interest rates will come down. They've already come down a little bit, but we're going to see them more and more coming down, which is going to be exciting. But also we're going to see investors, real estate investors, come off the fence where they've been wondering about investing in real estate, because we're going to see some of the prices go down. Not all the prices, but we're going to see that happen that we haven't seen this past year in 2023.
So at the end of 2023, rates were about 6.9%. They nearly doubled in 2022 from the Fed's rate hikes. Do we expect that now is going to be a good time to refinance?
Well, it depends on what your interest rate is. I hate to say that, but it's kind of like a fingerprint, because if you have a 3% interest rate, it's probably not going to be a good time for you. But if you're somebody who has, an 8%, and you're going to be able to get a better rate. But it also depends. One of the things that most people overlook is it depends a lot on whether there are a lot of additional fees, because you have to, even though the interest rate could seem really exciting, that sparkly thing that attracts you, but the interest rate is not the whole picture. You want to look at all the other fees that are included if you're going to refinance. So it depends. You want to look at all of those fees and then decide whether it's going to be a good time to refinance.
That is a really interesting point that you make there. Back as of November last year, median sale price was about $387,000. So what do you have for people who are now trying to enter the home ownership market?
Well, it's actually pretty exciting. No matter, I'm licensed as a real estate agent in Virginia, D.C., Maryland, and Florida. And one of the things that I've noticed in all of those different jurisdictions are for not only the first-time home buyer, but the home buyer in general. Doesn't even mean the first-time home buyer. There are amazing programs out there. Just to give you an example, like for instance, on the local level in Pinellas County, there's $75,000 for buyers. And that's not just for first-time home buyers, that's for any buyers. And then on the federal level, there's a program that's called the HEROES program, and that's up to as much as $50,000 for buyers. So again, you know, when we were talking about, as you asked me before, about refinancing and interest rates, the interest rate is not the whole story. If you're a buyer and you want to get into the market, the price of the house matters, the interest rate matters, but all the other fees. And then are there any programs that would pay for your down payment or pay for your closing costs or help you buy down the rate? All of those things are kind of the secret sauce that's going to make it a good decision to buy, or it could be a bad decision and you might need to wait, depending on what's available in your local area.
That's a good point, Jennifer. And a chief economist at Redfin is saying that they're probably not expecting to see rates drop below 6%, and thus they're not going to see a big increase in home sales. So what do you have for people that are trying to sell their home? What advice?
Well, I think the advice for somebody selling their home is one of my favorite things is I put together 17 questions. You interview your real estate agent because that person should be the expert in your area. So interview somebody who knows your local area really well. And whether it's a good time or a bad time, the inventory is so low that you might be able to get such a great price for it. It might be a good time to sell, but it depends. Again, you know, real estate very much is local. What's happening in your local neighborhood? One neighborhood next door to another neighborhood, the houses could be selling for completely different prices, and that could be impacted by so many other things that are happening in that neighborhood. So it's really exciting, but it happens so much to do with interviewing your real estate agent. I call it finding your yay real estate agent, because your yay real estate agent should help you have yays in your real estate decisions.
Well, this is excellent input on this. Jennifer Hammond, real estate expert, thank you.
It's such a pleasure. Happy New Year. Have a wonderful and blessed year.
Such enthusiasm can only mean good things, right?
Yeah, she's definitely that yay realtor. And, you know, they're expecting these rates to come down, and that could probably lead to a lot more buyers hitting the market.
Right, but I also like what she said about, you know, refinancing, that you should look at all of the fees before diving head on into it. I think we had in the program, right, that a vast majority of people buying last year were looking to refinance. So those are good tips.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors to consider in that.
All right, stay with us for 1 minute, and we'll be right back to start the second part.
There are real consequences to controlled media. And NTD's founders know them firsthand. Our freedom of thought is the price. This is the lesson that guides us in everything we do.
So there's the tear gas there.
We know the value of a free society. And we take seriously the responsibility to preserve it. We are NTD.
Good morning. Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. A D.C. judge dismisses part of a lawsuit against former President Trump related to the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. But other accusations in the case will continue, and Trump doubles down on his claim of presidential immunity by appealing Maine's ruling to take him off the ballot.
The latest 14th Amendment lawsuit has been filed to keep a Pennsylvania congressman off the primary ballot. Get the whole story coming up.
Cash, gold bars, and a luxury car, Senator Bob Menendez is facing new accusations of corruption and bribery. More on a superseding indictment involving Qatar.
Harvard President Claudine Gay calling it a wrap, handing in her resignation. Will she be staying at Harvard, and will her departure help ease the anti-Semitism some say is prevalent on campus?
Looking for a healthy start to the new year? Researchers in the UK take a look at some things that could help you get a head start on your physical health.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome also from me. Today is Wednesday, January 3rd, and we're heading to today's top news. Former President Donald Trump is trying to get back on the Maine primary ballot in 2024.
The 45th president and current GOP presidential frontrunner asked the court in Maine to overturn the decision that resulted in his removal.
In his filing, Trump accuses Maine Secretary of State Shen Yun of political bias.
Last week, Bellows said she had a legal obligation to take Trump off the ballot because of his actions during the January 6th breach of the U.S. Capitol.
Trump is also dealing with the 14th Amendment-related challenges to his ability to run for president in numerous states.
That includes Colorado, where the state Supreme Court removed Trump from its primary ballot. The Supreme Court is expected to get involved in this issue, and any ruling from the High Court would be the final say on the matter in all states where Trump's eligibility is in question. Next, we hear more on Trump's appeal in Maine and a likely appeal over Colorado's ruling from Will Scharf. He's a former federal prosecutor and attorney for Trump. Thank you so much for your time today, Will. How will it be possible to convince the Maine Superior Court upon appeal that Secretary of State Bellows acted out of bias in her decision to remove Trump from the ballot?
I think Secretary of State Bellows' actions reek of bias in every respect. I think her motive was clearly political here. I don't think there was any legal basis whatsoever to exclude President Trump, who, it's worth noting, has never been indicted for insurrection, has certainly never been convicted of insurrection, to keep him off the ballot. We believe that the U.S. Supreme Court will ultimately do the right thing here and keep President Trump on the ballot nationwide. But certainly this Maine decision is so deficient in anything even coming close to the due process that it would deserve that we think it will be swiftly overturned.
Yes, and Bellows, a member of the ACLU, took criticism for using that vague and rarely used clause to keep Confederates that were guilty of insurrection out of the White House. Now, let's go to Colorado. Will Trump appeal to the Supreme Court over that ruling in time by the January 4th deadline?
Well, the Colorado Republican Party has already appealed. As you said, the deadline for President Trump or the Trump campaign to file a petition for the writ of certiorari would be within the next couple days. I think you'll hear more news from that in the coming days. But it's worth noting that the issues on appeal, what we're dealing with here is a totally lawless decision by the Colorado Supreme Court that would be reversible on any number of grounds. The 14th Amendment provision here has been wildly misapplied to President Trump and to his case. And I think everyone involved with this case is confident that the Supreme Court will do the right thing, potentially even by a 9-0 margin. That's how wildly out there and lawless the Colorado Supreme Court's decision was.
Well, in Colorado and Maine, there has been concerns of a lack of due process here, given a split decision by the Colorado Supreme Court and a unilateral decision in Maine. Do you think that Trump is likely to gain so much momentum in early voting states that Maine and Colorado will be irrelevant anyway?
I think at the end of the day, President Trump is going to be on the ballot, both in the primary and general election in all 50 states. I think all of these lawsuits are a desperate attempt by radical left-wing political activists to interfere in an election where they have a very real fear that President Trump is going to win. The polls bear that out, that he is the leading candidate for president in the United States. And the idea that they would manipulate the legal process to achieve a political end is just deeply at variance with the American tradition of free and open elections, of due process under the law, of a depoliticization of our legal system. I think we're all confident that the Supreme Court is going to get involved here, that it's going to do the right thing. The Colorado decision, the Maine decision, these are lawless decisions with no basis in the law, and they should be swiftly overturned.
So, Will, just to clarify something in 10 seconds here, do Colorado and Maine's decisions to keep Trump off the primary ballot apply directly to the general election ballot?
Not necessarily, but we think the issues are the same. What we're dealing with here is this section of the 14th Amendment that has never been used in this way before. As you said before, it was originally crafted to deal with former Confederates. Again, President Trump has never even been indicted, officially accused of insurrection, certainly never convicted of it. His due process rights demand far more than what these courts or what Shen Yun in Maine have done. And I think ultimately the courts and the law will vindicate President Trump in his position here. And I think he's going to be on the ballot, and I think he will be our next president.
Trump attorney Will Scharf, thank you so much for giving us your insight on this.
Great to be with you as always.
A federal judge has dismissed part of a lawsuit against former President Trump and 2 J6 defendants. It's related to the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick.
Sicknick had 2 strokes and died a day after the Capitol was breached. Sicknick's ex-girlfriend Sandra Garza brought the lawsuit against Trump.
The judge in the case found Garza lacked statutory standing to bring a wrongful death claim because she was not his spouse or domestic partner under D.C. law.
3 of the 5 civil counts were dismissed. Garza can now proceed with a claim against Trump under D.C.'s Survival Act. It allows a representative of Sicknick's estate to take legal action on his behalf after his death.
Another part of the lawsuit that's allowed to continue is an accusation that Trump and the 2 defendants engaged in a conspiracy to violate civil rights.
The judge noted that the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals has already ruled that Trump doesn't have presidential immunity from J6 lawsuits.
The last GOP debate before the Iowa caucuses will only include 2 candidates, former U.S. Ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. That's according to CNN, which will host the January 10th debate. Haley and DeSantis and former President Trump have successfully qualified, but instead, Trump will hold a Fox News town hall meeting in Iowa at the same time, according to Fox. Entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy and former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie failed to meet CNN's debate qualifications. In a post on X, Ramaswamy predicted that the DeSantis-Haley debate would be the most boring in modern history and said he would participate in a podcast hosted by journalist Tim Pool instead. Nikki Haley criticized Trump for failing to participate in another debate. She said it's time for Trump to show up with only 3 candidates qualifying. CBS reports that the RNC won't be involved in the January 10th debate or any debates afterwards, saying it's up to the candidates if they wish to participate. The debate is scheduled for January 10th at Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. And more accusations of insurrection. A lawsuit filed yesterday aims to keep a Pennsylvania congressman off the state's primary ballot over the Constitution's insurrection clause. The suit aims to bar Representative Scott Perry from the 2024 ballot. It cites Perry's role in trying to use the Department of Justice to stall certification of the 2020 presidential election. Perry's lawyer said the lawsuit was filed by a partisan activist with no regard or understanding of how democracy works. He said he's confident the Supreme Court will put an end to the question. Perry is expected to run for a 7th term, although candidates cannot file paperwork yet to qualify for Pennsylvania's primary ballot. Coming up, Harvard President Claudine Gay resigning from her post. And what does the lawmaker who sparked the controversy by questioning Gay at the congressional hearing have to say? And we have some updates on the Japan Airlines plane that crashed with a Japanese Coast Guard plane yesterday. So stay tuned for that. And looking for ways to kickstart your new year, researchers in the UK take a look at some activities that could give you a boost in your physical fitness. A rescued orphan squirrel brings love, happiness, and a book deal to a Florida family. Hear their story coming up. Welcome back. Hamas says one of its senior leaders has been killed in an explosion in Beirut, Lebanon. This as Israel continues its efforts to destroy terrorist targets in Gaza and bring the remaining hostages home. Hamas has been quick to say Israel killed deputy political and military leader Saleh al-Aruri. 2 other leaders from Hamas were also killed, but Israel hasn't officially confirmed or denied responsibility yet. And over to Japan, the plane crash yesterday is now under investigation. Authorities are probing whether the incident involved professional negligence. The crash between the commercial plane and a smaller Coast Guard plane killed 5 people.
All passengers of the commercial Airbus A350 survived the disaster. NTD's Congressman has more updates on the situation.
Japanese authorities are inspecting the charred airliner wreckage before its removal from Haneda Airport. Officials say more information has now surfaced that can provide a better insight into the crash.
The flight recorder of the Coast Guard plane has been recovered. By recover, I mean that the actual apparatus that was on the plane is finally now in hand. This is the state we are at. Now we will bring this back to the office and we will check to see whether or not we can extract the data. It's not always that this is 100% possible, so our work now is to see if there is data that can be used.
According to a new statement by Japan Airlines, the crew of the passenger plane was cleared to land by air traffic control before the collision. The crew acknowledged and repeated the landing permission from air traffic control and proceeded with the approach and landing procedures. The airline said the plane collided with the Coast Guard aircraft and caught fire immediately after landing. Only one of the 6 crew survived on the Coast Guard aircraft. All 379 passengers on the commercial airliner survived.
I did smell a little bit of smoke inside the plane, but I didn't see passengers panicking. We all got off the plane in about 5 minutes. I was not that scared. The plane had landed on the ground and I didn't think it would explode. Everyone got off the plane in an orderly way, so I thought we would be okay. I heard an explosion about 10 minutes after we got off the plane. We would have been in trouble if we had left even a little late. I can only say it was a miracle. We could have died if we were late in evacuating.
The Coast Guard plane was on a mission to send aid to the country's west following Monday's deadly earthquake. The confirmed death toll now stands at 62, but dozens are believed to still be trapped under the rubble of collapsed buildings. Congressman, NTD News.
A new indictment against Senator Bob Menendez accuses him of accepting gifts from Qatar as part of a years-long corruption scheme.
The superseding indictment, released yesterday, claims the New Jersey Democrat used influence to help secure an investment for a co-conspirator from a fund tied to Qatar's government.
Prosecutors allege he exchanged favors for money, gold, and race car tickets, among other things. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the new accusations.
Federal prosecutors allege in Tuesday's superseding indictment that Menendez's bribery and extortion scheme ran into 2023, a year longer than they initially believed. The indictment accuses Menendez of a years-long corruption scheme, adding Qatar to a list beside Egypt as foreign countries he allegedly helped while in office. Prosecutors claim Menendez accepted payments from a co-conspirator, New Jersey real estate developer Fred Davies, to help obtain millions of dollars from an investment fund tied to Qatar. The rewritten indictment alleges the senator introduced a member of the Qatari royal family and a member of the fund to Davies. Prosecutors say Menendez did not note gifts from Qatar and Davies on his financial disclosure forms, including a gold bar and tickets to the Formula One Grand Prix. Davies is one of 3 businessmen charged, along with the senator and his wife. All of them have pleaded not guilty. In addition to bribery charges, Menendez is accused of acting as a foreign agent for the government of Egypt. That's for allegedly helping the country to benefit another co-defendant's export business. Menendez's attorney stated Tuesday that the government doesn't have the proof to back up any of the accusations, calling them baseless, bizarre, and based on routine lawful contacts between constituents or foreign officials. Menendez was chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, but gave the position up after being arrested last year. He has resisted calls to step down from the Senate. GOP presidential candidate Chris Christie says he's disappointed with Democrats for not taking solid action.
At least the Republicans removed George Santos. Where are the Democrats in the United States Senate with removing this guy? This is now a second superseding indictment, so it's a third set of charges.
Christie says it's too big a risk, given Menendez's position of leadership and access to U.S. intelligence.
I don't understand how Chuck Schumer can't go to Mitch McConnell right now and say, look, we need to have a vote to kick him out.
Menendez is facing charges of conspiring to commit bribery, honest services fraud, extortion, and acting as a foreign agent. His trial is set for May 6th. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
As the illegal immigration crisis continues unabated, House Speaker Mike Johnson is heading to Eagle Pass, Texas today to visit the border.
Johnson will be accompanied by 60 other Republican lawmakers.
They will meet with state and local officials to discuss their experience on the ground and what they see as failures of the Biden administration to enforce border policy.
Speaker Johnson says America is experiencing the worst border crisis in the nation's history and stated it's impacting every community in the country. He's accusing President Biden and Senate Democrats of being asleep at the wheel.
Johnson says House Republicans are demanding immediate solutions to the problems. Fox News reported that over 300,000 people attempted to cross the southern border in December alone.
The House Speaker will hold a news conference on border security at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
The embattled Harvard president, Claudine Gay, announced yesterday she's stepping down.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on her resignation just 6 months into her tenure.
The move comes after a tumultuous month following Gay's testimony to Congress about campus anti-Semitism.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment, yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
Gay soon came under pressure to resign from Harvard's Jewish community and others. The university was also hit financially as some wealthy donors suspended or withdrew funding. Harvard alum and billionaire investor Bill Ackman wrote on X that he was personally aware of more than $1 billion of terminated donations from a small group of Harvard's most generous Jewish and non-Jewish alumni. Following Gay's resignation, Representative Elise Stefanik wrote on X, 2 down. Jacob Miller, Harvard student and Hillel president, said Gay stepping down is just the first step.
For me, the most important issue has been the anti-Semitism we've been seeing on a nearly daily basis across the school.
In her resignation letter, Gay said, quote, "It has been distressing to have doubt cast on my commitments to confronting hate and to upholding scholarly rigor, and frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racial animus." Harvard Corporation defended Gay and said they accepted her resignation with sorrow. The corporation, which is the university's governing body, said she showed remarkable resilience in the face of deeply personal and sustained attacks. Although Gay has stepped down as president, she will remain at Harvard, returning to a position on the school's faculty. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Going into 2024, we're all looking for ways to start the new year on the right foot, mentally and physically.
New research shows that a few minutes of physical activity every day can have some positive benefits for your heart. Let's take a look.
Researchers at the University College London's Institute of Sport, Exercise and Health say that just a few minutes of moderate activity a day can improve heart health. Researchers assessed different movement patterns and found that just 5 minutes of activity every 24 hours had a positive effect on heart health compared to sitting.
We found that sitting or laying, so sedentary behaviors, were the worst for you. So things like watching TV, even sitting in a car, commuting, laying down on the sofa, scrolling on your phone, that type of thing. 5 minutes of replacing sitting with running or cycling was associated with benefits for your heart health.
They found that a 20-minute brisk walk every day, followed by simple balancing and stretching at home, can maintain physical fitness as you age.
The simple exercises you can start to do to ensure that you maintain your physical fitness as you get older are things like squats and lunges for your lower body, press-ups against a wall if you can't do them on the floor.
Researchers say all kinds of activity, not just strenuous activity, are good, such as going for a brisk walk. According to one assistant professor, many daily activities can also count as exercise.
Also think about the activities in your daily life, like for example, when you go grocery shopping, you're going to lift 2 bags and walk into your house with them. That is incredibly useful for maintaining your muscle strength. Also picking up cans and putting them in the fridge or on shelves, that's also useful. So just try to get activities in every day. If you think about your 24-hour day and you think about activities to improve the health of your heart, activities to maintain your muscle strength and activities to maintain your balance, you're going to be set for 2024.
And having a pet can be beneficial in many ways. They offer unconditional love and a chance to provide some nurturing.
A family in Florida found and raised an orphaned squirrel. They say caring for it comes with challenges and just as many benefits. Here's their story.
Family in Florida acted as a good Samaritan when they found an abandoned baby squirrel. They named him Mr. Peaches.
they went outside and they found a baby squirrel abandoned on our deck. And they brought him in, and I was out, and I came home, and my daughter was holding this little, I thought it was a rat at first, and it was Mr. Peaches.
Little did they know the positive effect he would have on their family and the lessons they have learned from him.
I don't know, it taught me about nature, and I sit and I play with this little squirrel, and I just, you know, I understand it's a wild animal, but the fact that he bonded with us and crawls on us and completely trusts us, it's an amazing thing. So he's definitely taught me to slow down, quiet down, and look around and feel nature.
Videos of Mr. Peaches went viral and racked up millions of social media views. Fans of her videos encouraged her to write a book.
We used actual pictures. That's my dog, but we cartoon them. So it's the real background to my house, but the squirrel and the dog are animated. And everything rhymes. It was Jake who found me and brought me home. Nevermore do I want to roam. Life is peachy. It's very cute.
Mr. Peaches entered their lives during a difficult time when the family had just lost someone close to them. The support they provide for each other has been beneficial for everyone involved. Fans of their social media videos also get happiness from watching the antics of Mr. Peaches.
It's not that hard to win a squirrel's heart. Just give him some nuts.
Looks like it. Listen, I'm always surprised how loyal these wild animals get once you rescue them. I had a friend when I was little. She rescued a sparrow, and it could fly away, but it always came back for years.
Oh, wow, that's
Incredible,
interesting.
huh?
Yeah, and I have reason to believe that squirrels actually eat peaches, because my peach tree at the homestead was always coming up empty.
Oh,
yeah,
those
I think
little
they're
squirrels.
getting into it.
All right. We have to wrap up our show at this point, but we'll keep you updated with the latest information. Stay tuned for our news broadcast at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. That's the news today, and thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.